Yo, what's going on, guys? So we just got the first part of the upcoming balance changes for the patch 3.16, and this one is about flasks and ailment mitigation. So what I want to do today is give you a short summary in case you just don't want to read it, because there is a lot of reading here, and I will give you my opinion on all of the changes, especially from the point of view of Pathfinder, since that's my main class and that's gonna be my league starter, and obviously the Flask changes affect Pathfinder a lot, so let's talk about that. So if I would have to choose one thing that you need to know from all of that text, the most important thing is changes to the soul of Brian King. Upgraded Soul of Brian King now will give you cannot be frozen instead of you cannot be frozen if you've been frozen recently, which basically means if you get the upgraded soul, which means you just have to kill one boss in the maps with Divine Vessel, I believe that's how it's called, you're just gonna be permanently immune to freeze, which is insane, to be honest. And so far I think this one Pantheon is actually the most powerful Pantheon probably so far. Also, we got a lot of other Pantheon buffs, especially for the ailments. So for example, now Soul of Aberath will give 60% less duration of ignite on you. So let's say someone is igniting you for 3 seconds, now it will, instead of 3 seconds, last 1 second. So with 60%, you actually might even not need to go for 100%. It is still gonna reduce the damage you take by a lot, but obviously if you want to, you can go for Soul. Actually, you can go for a Soul of Brian King, because that's the big Pantheon, and for the small one you can go for Soul of Aberath, so you are both immune to freeze and you take a lot less damage from ignite, and you can push it to 100%. At the same time, there is a similar Pantheon for shock, so 60% reduce effect of shock. So again, you can push it to 100% with some different methods, or you can just keep it at 60%, which is still pretty nice. You will take much less damage when you are shocked if you have that. The next really powerful one is Soul of Ralakesh, which now will give you moving while bleeding, doesn't cause you to take extra damage. And in case you don't know, the main portion of the damage that you take from the bleed is while you are moving. So this is almost like immunity to bleed. It's not 100% reduced damage from bleeding, but it's basically reducing the damage by so much that you might actually not need bleed immunity anymore. I guess we're gonna see how good it actually is. And also the curse effect reduction has been also buffed, so now it's 30% instead of 20%. And that's pretty much it in terms of the most important Pantheon buffs. The next important thing is now when you are gonna play in a party, your whole party is pretty much gonna be element immune, because the only thing you need is one person to take Purity of Elements aura, and that aura will give you and all nearby allies immune to elemental ailments, which means that pretty much every single party will have one person with that and will be just immune to it. No one has to worry about it, which is very, very powerful for a party. But the part 3 is gonna cover the auras and overall changes to party play, so I guess we're gonna see how it's gonna affect that. Okay, next let's talk about the ailments overall. So the ailments, pretty much all of the nerfs in the previous patch, so 3.15, has been reversed, to be honest. For example, if you look at the crafts, there was a craft which was giving 25% chance to avoid elemental ailments, and in previous league it got nerfed to 80% and it's back to 25%. So it's pretty much the same. It's same for the chest. It's 35 instead of 30. And we also got actually even buffs, because we got some new crafting modifiers. So for example, on a ring you can get 60% reduced ignite duration, effect of chill, shock, curses, 25% of curses actually, and so on. So there is a lot of new ailment mitigation on the items. Also now we have the new avoidance modifiers on jewels. So there is 15% reduced effect of chill and shock on you, and also suffixes that were giving 20% chance to avoid any ailment now is giving 30. So it's gonna be much easier to just get 100% chance to avoid certain ailments. Also on the flasks, now we got back the old version of immunity to ailment during flask effect, but it has been nerfed, and to be honest I think people are underestimating how bad the nerf is. So now what it says is you gain immunity to, let's say, shock during flask effect, but the flask has 33% less duration. So with all of the changes to how many flask charges we are gaining from the last league, with 35% less duration, that's actually a pretty big nerf. So you will have, let's say, full immunity to shock when you have flask, but that flask is not gonna last as long. Obviously, if you're gonna do some kind of endgame strategy and you're gonna have a GG build, you're probably gonna be able to have 100% uptime on the flasks, but still in the early game it's gonna actually suck quite a lot, because, well, you're just not gonna have 100% uptime and you're just gonna die. Also, we are keeping the new version, so the grants immunity to, let's say, shock if you use it while you are shocked. But now, instead of the immunity lasting for like 3 seconds or 5 seconds, I don't remember how it was, now it's gonna be 15 to 17 seconds, which is quite a long time. So it's pretty much decision between choosing this one, which is the flask is gonna last normally longer time, but you have to use it during being shocked, but you will gain a very long time for being immune to that ailment. And also there is a new one modifier, which is where is it? This one, chance to avoid being shocked during flask effect, chance to avoid being ignited, and so on. There is also reduced effect of shock, so this is kinda in between. You are getting not full immunity to ailment, but you can also stack it with, let's say, Pantheon or some items, so you can still get 100% immunity to certain ailments without having 35% less duration. So to sum things up, in terms of ailments, there's pretty much 5 ways to deal with ailments, in my opinion. So the way that has been introduced in 3.15, which is reactive way. So when you are shocked, you use your flask, you remove the shock, and you gain very long amount of time of being immune to shock. Also, you can combine this with the enchants. So let's say you have the enchant for the flask use when being shocked, and you will pretty easily gain this buff this way. Also, we have the old way with 35% less duration. Again, it's gonna be probably pretty bad, but still, if you want to, you can do that. And we got a new way, which is the reduced effect, just up to 65%, or chance to avoid, which you can combine with some other modifiers, and you can get up to 100% if you want to go for that, especially something like let's say Raider. So also what you can do is you don't really have to go for like full ailment immunity, like Flask and so on. You can just go for the you can choose one or maybe two ailment that you just hate, and you can get very easily that ailment immunity for that ailment. So for example, let's say you hate cold, so freeze and ignite. So you can just go for Soul of Brine King, cannot be frozen, and you go for Soul of Aberath, less duration of ignite on you, and you combine it with, let's say, Ring, reduce duration, and you just have 100% reduced duration of ignite on you. And you don't have to go for shock if you, for example, don't care about shock. So if you just don't want one or two ailments, you just go for that. You don't have to go for all of them. And also we still keep our old ascendancy. So Pathfinder keeps the remove ailment when you use a flask, and Raider has a 50% chance to avoid ailments while phasing. So you can still have some other ways to gain ailment immunity. Now let's talk about the curses. So first important thing about the curses is that we got the Kikarazu ring buff. So now it's giving 60% reduce effect of curses instead of 40%, which is very big buff for builds that are using Soul Mantle with totem builds, because we need a lot of reduce effect of curses on you, and this is gonna help a lot for that build. Also, now we have a new Flask effect, reduce effect of curses on you during Flask. So 65% combined with Soul of Yugul, 30%, 95% reduce effect of curses. So you are pretty much immune to curses with just these two things, which is very, very good. And also, if you want to, you can get the additional 10% on jewel. You can even stack it for multiple jewels, and you can get even up to 100% if you want to, but that would probably be a waste. Also, now the Consecrated Ground gives 50% reduce effectiveness of curses. So here it is, allied Consecrated Ground now gives 50% reduce effect of curses to the people that are standing on it. So again, you can stack it with some other sources, you can get up to 100%. And again, we have the buffed Pantheon now, which is giving 30%. Okay, now let's move on to Flask. Other than the changes that I already mentioned, so ailments and curses. So first important thing is that they actually increased the duration of a lot of flasks, which actually might just counter the 35% less duration nerf. So if you're gonna combine, let's say, 6 seconds instead of 4 seconds with 35% less duration, it's gonna feel pretty much the same. But if you just want to have a longer flasks, again, don't go for this mod. But yeah, it's gonna feel much better with increase the duration of the flasks. Next, now as you can see here, there is a level in a bracket, which basically means these modifiers require this item level of the flask to be able to roll this mod. So for example, if you want to reduce effect or curses on you during Flask, and let's say you want that on Jade Flask, you will need that Jade Flask to be item level 84, which is actually pretty nice. It might actually make it so people will actually pick up high item level bases of the flasks, and especially during the beginning of a league, I would highly recommend to put them on your filter and just pick up like 80, 82, 84 item level flasks, and you might be able to sell them for a decent amount, maybe like even 10 chaos or something. It's gonna depend on the moment of the league. And especially 84, since 84 is not that easy to get, even in red maps. Another pretty interesting change is to the life flasks. So now there is a new mod which says recover an additional 40% of life recovery over 10 seconds if you used the flask while not on full life. So this basically means, let's say your flask is recovering you 1k life. Now during after the flask is not even recovering life to you anymore, you still have a buff over that will over 10 seconds recover 40% of that, so 400. So this is actually a pretty decent amount of life to be recovered. And yeah, again, it stays after the flask is gone. And also they said there is more just flask oriented passives on the tree. They mentioned some of them here, but to be honest, a lot of them are gonna be changed. We're just gonna have to see how the passive tree is gonna look like. Okay, so now let's move on to the last part, which is how all of these changes will affect Pathfinder. So first thing, which I actually didn't mention, is the new modifiers on belts. There is a new modifier which gives Flask of Light to you have 12% increase effect, which I believe this effect did exist, but it was only on influenced items, and now it was veiled, I don't remember exactly, but now you will just be able to roll this pretty easily early on in the game. And when you are playing a Pathfinder, you mostly are playing some kind of bow build, and you will be using Dying Sun, which means if you want to have 3 projectiles from Dying Sun instead of 2, you want to reach 50% increased flask effect of Pathfinder, which is pretty much only possible if you are a Pathfinder. With this, it might be actually possible without being a Pathfinder, but I don't believe so. But anyway, this will just make it so it's much easier, especially early on in the league, to reach that 50%. With that flask modifiers, you might be able to not go for like one cluster on the passive tree or something. So this is gonna help a lot. Also, there are some other flask modifiers, passives, not passives, mods on items, but all of them are kind of whatever. This one is the most important one, especially for Pathfinder. Also, if you are a Pathfinder and again you have 50% flask effectiveness, your flask is recovering a lot of life to you. So this new mod, where is it? This one is actually gonna recover a lot of life to you. So again, if you have 50% flask effectiveness, think of it as recovering like 60% of your life, or the life recovery from the life flask, which might be a lot. And also now life flasks will recover, I think it is mentioned somewhere. Okay, I'm not gonna find it right now, but they mentioned that the life flasks are now gonna recover life in shorter duration, which basically means instead of like in 4 seconds, you will recover life in 2 seconds. So life flask will just recover more life just faster. So that's also bad for a Pathfinder if you are relying on recovery from your life flasks. Another big buff for Pathfinder is it's for a lot of classes, but mostly for Pathfinder. There is a modifier that increases attack speed during flask effect by up to 17%. It used to be 12%. So if you are Pathfinder, again, 50% increase effectiveness, it's gonna make it so it's like, I believe 5% or something around that. So a lot of attack speed just from one flask. If you are a Pathfinder, definitely go for this mod. And the same thing for cast speed, if you are a caster Pathfinder. The next important thing is, again, if you have 50% flask effectiveness on Pathfinder, this mod is basically the same thing as this mod. So if you have 65% reduced effect of shock, plus 50% effectiveness of your flask, this is, I believe, like 96%, 97%. So you're pretty much immune to shock. The same for the curse. So this mod is basically you are immune to curses if you are a Pathfinder with 50% effect of Flasks. So that's a very big buff to Pathfinder. But the weird thing about Pathfinder is that there's a lot of ailment buffs and so on, but if you are a Pathfinder, it's probably still gonna be worth to just go for Master Alchemist, and you're just gonna remove elemental ailments when you use a flask. And on the flasks, I would probably just go for one flask, would be a life flask with a new mod, most likely. Second one would be with attack speed or cast speed, depending on what kind of build you are playing. Third one would be with cursed effectiveness, so 65%, again with 50% increased effect, would be 100% curse immune. And then probably like a Dying Sun, and fifth one maybe like a Jade with increased effect of the flask and increased evasion. So again, you probably don't really need any ailments, not even on a tree. But if you don't have your Pearl up, so early on in the league, you would probably, as a Pathfinder, still go for like a Pantheon for the Cannot Be Frozen and so on. So for the Pathfinder, it's looking very nice. I'm not gonna lie. I think again people are underestimating how annoying this is gonna be for a lot of other classes, but as a Pathfinder it's not gonna be as annoying, especially since you can just go for the Ascendancy. And to be honest, I believe this might actually get changed, maybe, because it just removes an element and doesn't do anything else. And this thing gives also the immunity for some amount of time, so I guess we're gonna see if they are gonna change the Master Alchemist. If not, it might be actually worth to go for Master Surgeon for bleed immunity and just go for Cannot Be Frozen on this Pantheon. On second Pantheon, let's say reduce effect of shocks, and just go for one flask with where is it, like a reduced duration of ignite or whatever it is. I'm not gonna look for it. So yeah, overall I like the changes, they are looking pretty good, and we have to see how it's gonna look like actually in the game when we are playing it. So thanks for watching, and see you next time.